Hello, everybody. Welcome to our in-depth look at the impact of Bombora's data on publishers. This is, I believe, the very first webinar we've ever had here at Bombora that focuses solely on our data co-op, at least in the 2 years I've been here, which, by the way, is today. It's my work anniversary. Yay! I'm Nina, and I work at Bombora, obviously. I'm the segment marketer for both the co-op and audience solutions teams here, and I will be your moderator. But enough about me. Today, we're going to be talking about another first, which is the first time we've commissioned Forrester to conduct a study on our behalf that analyzes how a global news publication uses Bombora's co-op data and its integration with firmographic insights. Before I introduce our esteemed speakers, a few housekeeping notes. One, yes, this webinar is being recorded, so you'll have access to the on-demand after the fact, because I know you're going to want to watch it over and over and over as you're falling asleep every night. However, there's definitely a benefit to attending live and staying through to the end, because number two, you as the live people have the ability to submit questions for the Q&A. You can do so by popping them into the Q&A tab or just right into the chat, which I'll be monitoring throughout the presentation. And now let's go ahead and have today's speakers introduce themselves. Emma, you can go to the next slide where you'll see a picture of yourself and then get to talk about yourself. There you are. So so you already know who I am. I'm Nina, I'm your MC. And here are the other smart people who are going to say smart things. Emma, why don't you go first?
Thank you, Nina. Yeah, welcome everyone. I'm a consultant on Forrester's Total Economic Impact team. And our team basically helps organizations quantify and articulate the value of investments. So I will look forward to sharing with you in a second the results of this study.
And hi, I'm Shalay. So I'm the SVP of Insights and Partner Success at Bombora. Before I started at Bombora, I was actually a publisher. So I started off my career selling digital ads, and a lot of the same probably like challenges that folks here are experiencing. And with Bombora, I was actually started in the data cooperative where I helped our publishers start to leverage our data, build different tools, build different products. And then now I sort of run the insights team across the company. So I get to work with brands, agencies, and publishers all to make the data actionable and figure out what are we actually doing with this? How do we use this to commercialize our business and grow our business. So thanks for having us and thanks for joining.
Cool. Thanks, guys. I think if we go on to the next slide, Shalay, you get to keep speaking. Yay, go for it.
Yes. So let me just, this will not be very long, but just a quick intro on Bombora, right? We run this data cooperative. It's really the largest of its kind. There's nothing else like it in the universe. We work with 5,000 different business news sites, everyone from the Wall Street Journal to VentureBeat to C-Trade Maritime, which is an Informa publication. So we work with all these publishers, first-party relationships. We sign paperwork, they place our tag, and then we do two things. One is we use a natural language processor to understand, based on all of the news articles to webinars, to white papers, to case studies, what are those pages about, right? Is this article about Facebook or privacy or social media marketing? And then two, we try to understand what kind of business user is visiting here, is reading this page, because anybody that's had a website knows, right, how much of your audience do you actually know who they are? Very small, right? Most of us is like less than 95%. Do you actually know who that website visitor is? And so that's what Bombora helps do, is we, again, classify the pages with our own AI to say this page is about privacy and this page is read by this kind of person. With those two pieces, next slide, we help create our company surge intent products. So what we're doing here is we're trying to understand not just whenever a business professional is reading about privacy, because privacy professionals read about privacy all the time. Not that interesting. So what we're actually trying to do is figure out when a company is actually in market for new privacy tools, right? New privacy capabilities, trying to update their own, their own SOC 2 compliance, their own TCF 2.0 framework. Whenever you have to do those things, right, we're able to register when a company is researching more and more and more of that topic to actually signal that their intent. So that's what this slide here is showing you. The blue line is sort of normal activity. The orange line is when we're trying to identify those spikes in research. So that's what we do here is right, we're identifying unknown users, we identify what they're reading about, and then we put it on this baseline to be able to identify what is intent versus what's just normal business activity. One more slide, and this will be the last I say. This is actually what we deliver back. to publishers. We're delivering back basically data on your first party activity, right? Who are those visitors, those unknown visitors to your website? And not just, right, this person works at Bombora.com, but also Bombora.com is a small company. It is a software company. Myself, I'm interested in privacy. And this is how much time I spent on the site, right? This is how much I've engaged. So that's one part of our data set. The second part of our data set is, look across the 5,000 websites, right? What are these companies signaling intent for, right? Maybe there's actually a trend in privacy going on right now that I can only see because I can look at all of this research data across millions of companies, across 5,000 websites, to actually identify trending topics, to identify how big the market is for privacy, to be able to measure the different brands that are selling solutions there, and how is the research around them growing or changing. And, is this typically done at large companies or small companies? So anyway, those are the two kinds of data that we provide back to publishers and customers. And, we're a data company, so our job is to send it to you however you want it to be. That's why you're not looking at a demo of our platform. It's just to explain these are the general data sets that we leverage with our publishers. And if there's any questions, I'll pop into that, but I want to really be able to direct attention to Emma and all of the research that she's done.
Thank you, Shalay. I think that's a great setup for us to start walking through the results of this study, which was commissioned by Bombora, and it's examining the total economic impact of Bombora specifically for publishers. So in terms of an agenda, we're going to start with an overview of the TEI framework. We'll walk through some of the customer journey, so what led this organization to their work with Bombora, and then we'll talk through the study results, so a return on investment calculation, and then we'll end with a Q&A. And so what is TEI? Well, Forrester knows that technology buying decision makers want to look beyond a TCO or total cost of ownership analysis these days. They're looking for something next level. So Forrester created this proven, repeatable methodology that helps customers and potential customers evaluate and anticipate what a potential return on investment business case investments might look like for their own organizations. And to do that, the methodology goes beyond TCO by looking at all four of these pillars here. So we have our benefits and we have our costs, and those can be both, productivity improvements, increased revenue, things like that, but also customer and employee experience is something we try to quantify. So really holistic look at benefits and costs here. When we think about costs, it's not just hardware or software, it's also training or labor costs, those soft costs that are really trying to capture, the full level of the investment. Flexibility is something that Forrester defines as kind of the possibilities an organization unlocks in the future by making an investment today. And then that last one is risk. And we look through all of the first three, benefits, costs, and flexibility, through this lens of risk. And that's thinking about what factors or barriers might make some organizations realize a different investment result, not realize an investment's full potential. So we make risk adjustments to all of the benefits and all of the costs that we'll walk through in this study to account for these risk factors. But again, ultimately, we're trying to help organizations like your own evaluate the potential ROI for your own organization. So we want you to take these results, read the full study where we break things down a little further, and start considering how you could quantify this value for your own organization. So to get this data, Forrester interviewed a publishing organization that is using Bombora's data. So this is a global organization with over 200 million page views per month, and a large part of their revenue comes from advertising and content partnerships. And as Shalay mentioned, proven viewership is really important in the publishing industry. And so having an incomplete audience understanding usually means you're missing out on some revenue that you could be accessing otherwise. So this customer has obviously been in the business of trying to understand their audience for a while, and they knew Bombora was going to be a part of that. They actually started utilizing Bombora's data indirectly years ago. They were receiving a flat file of data every 24 hours through a third party. And at that time, the data they got focused on some audience segments, but it didn't have trending data, it didn't have data over time, and it didn't have, the deeper level B2B insights that they really were looking for. It was lacking interest categories as well. It was hard for them to integrate this data. And they knew that they could get more from what Bombora had to offer. So they decided to deepen their relationship with Bombora to help solve these challenges. And that was in late 2020 when Bombora demonstrated kind of the full scope of its data and insights offerings. And that included, access to these deeper insights about the publisher's audience, about their site visitors, and about both of those things over time. So the organization knew that it wanted to use this data, these insights, to deliver additional value to its clients and to grow revenue. And so the specific goals were to improve post-campaign analytics reporting, and then to increase sales opportunities through this deeper B2B insights access. And the director of the partnerships said, and I quote, "What Bombora has allowed us to do is really provide in-depth insights and answer almost any question that one of our partners may have on their audience." So to get to kind of the money slide right from the start here, Forrester determined that the Bombora on this publishing organization had a 335% ROI. And that's coming from a total present value benefit of $4.4 million. You take that benefit, you subtract the total costs, and here we're looking at a net present value, or NPV, of $3.4 million and a payback period of less than 6 months. And this quote here again speaks to the fact that it's not just about winning those new campaigns, but there's also some efficiencies created when they had access to this data as well. So there's both an internal and an external benefit here. And so now, the answer is, how did you get to these benefit numbers? We quantified here 4 key benefits that the customer described. So profit from increased CPM, increased content partnership and digital campaign retention, improved win rate for advertising campaigns, and increased productivity. And again, those benefits total to $4.5 million roughly over 3 years. And in the full study, we break down the calculations even beyond what you see here into a financial framework that's easy to understand. It goes through row by row the math that we're doing to get to each of these numbers. So again, we really hope that you're able to get your hands on a copy of the full thing and really look at that framework from a lens of your organization. But now we'll go through some of these benefits in a slight more detail. So that first one we mentioned was increased profit from raised prices. So the organization used Bombora's data and insights to optimize their advertising towards viewers from their advertisers' ABM, or account-based marketing, customer lists. So they could prove to those clients that they got page views or got impressions from individuals at the specific organizations that their clients targeted. And they mentioned that even before, if they were able to offer, C-suite targeting or targeting firms in a specific industry, they couldn't get the same CPMs than when they reached the exact companies from that ABM list that they could do with Bombora. And so clients were then obviously willing to pay somewhat of a premium for that specific targeting. And ultimately, they were able to increase their cost per 1,000 views by 200%. About $20 to $60, and that translates to $2 million of additional profit for the organization over those 3 years.
If I can, I just want to say that this is a trend. I think that goes pretty universally across publishers, especially in today's environment, right? We know that if any budgets are being more scrutinized, being able to shift from just right, C-suite targeting or decision makers, right? A lot of advertisers will say, "Hey, I want to do lead gen," but it's really hard to convert those leads, and so just offering, right? Why don't I target? Like, you actually can name an account list, right? Name the companies that you want to engage, or I'll supply you companies that we think are in market for you, and it's a new element that even if the customer is not like, "I'm ready to do account-based marketing," it's a way to sort of shift the advertising mix to something that will have real meaning and real benefit, and you'll be able to sort of negotiate a better rate for that reach. So I just want to say, like, it's not just because the customers are asking for account-based marketing today, right? There's a reason for this shift that the publisher's leading, because it's a really useful way to engage into their audience. Especially in a world where there's just tightening budgets. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt, but I just want to add in. I think it's relevant. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely relevant. And I do think it ties a little bit into the second benefit as well. So increased content partnership and digital campaign retention. right? That's a similar story in that value add that they're able to provide to their partners and to their advertising clients, right? So one of the director of partnerships that we talked to at this organization, they said, again, their clients are trying to reach a specific audience. And not only can they then target those specific organizations, but they can also say, if you want to reach the C-suite within the tech industry or whatever they're looking for, here are the topics that you should be writing about, because they have access to that intent data and they know what people in that specific niche are really focused on at that moment. So they're really providing more data and also recommendations about the content that these clients and advertising partners should be focusing on, both in pre and post renewal conversations. Yeah.
Sorry. There's a question where somebody asked, what's a publisher? I think that's a really interesting one, actually, because every brand today, right, has content on their website. Their website is really the front door for almost every business. Really, I would say every business. And so the content that you create, the thought leadership that you create, things like this themselves, right, every brand is doing. And so publishers have been doing this for a very long time, right? I think it's like 400 years publishing has been around. So they are masterful storytellers. But even in today's, new world of technology, you need data to sort of drive what we're choosing, right? What are we publishing, and sort of what stories do we want to focus on that's really going to generate interest in an audience. And so for me, this one is about the fact that brands are looking to publishers for this, right? Because they're also trying to produce content. They're also trying to get audiences to, right, prospects to engage with them. And so when publishers can leverage this data to say, here's why I'm recommending this, I'm a masterful storyteller, and here's the data behind it, that's why you work with us. That's what makes this whole thing sing, is because, brands are starting to become publishers, and they need the data and the expertise to actually make it real, right? Because there's a million articles about everything. So who's going to read it? You have to have that skill.
Yeah, and you can imagine that once you have that partnership and that access to those insights, that's not something that you're going to want to give up. So here, for this organization, the campaign retention and partner retention in their content partnerships section of the business both improved by about 10% once they started really integrating these insights into the conversations that they were having with these clients and partners. So real tangible impact here that can be traced, directly to these insights. This quote on the screen, Bombora plays a large hand in the retention of almost all of our partners. That's huge. And that's directly because of Bombora. Another similar benefit here is the improved win rate for their advertising campaigns, right? So the same kind of thing that's going to help you retain customers is probably going to help you win in them in the first place, right? So with these insights, with this higher value delivery, they're able to hone in on these audience that their clients are looking for right off the bat. They can say, we'll be able to prove who's on our site, who's looking at what we're putting out there, what you're putting out there. We can track their engagement, we can track their intent, and that's really helping them in these buy-in conversations and helping increase that win rate. So with data and insights directly informing those media plans, directly informing the post-campaign reporting as well, and being able to, demonstrate that upfront, that's something that they're going to be able to deliver. This organization won a higher percentage of those deals when they were, having those buy-in conversations. And we've used a conservative estimation here to say, they're winning 1% more deals in year one of the engagement, and then 2% thereafter, because this isn't something that's as easy to directly correlate. We can't say that the only thing that changed at this organization was Bombora. We recognize that. That's in, these risk percentages and these risk factors that we have in this study. So there are times that we are conservative, and here we're looking at a 2% increase in new business revenue from this increased win rate. So it's a smaller number here from a financial perspective. This benefit is about $63,000 over the 3 years, as opposed to the $2 million we just saw from the improved retention, but it's still a huge part of the story. And again, we were conservative here as we're putting together this study.
I think that if there was a way, and I appreciate that, Emma, if there's a way to sort of quantify the headache that you might have trying to respond to an RFP that's asking for, right? I need the left-handed freckled redhead from this one company. That's the only person I want to reach. And like, you're just like, how can I even find that, right? Literally as customers and brands and agencies, RFP publishers, they ask for really, really niche and narrow targeting. And there's just not an easy way to answer some of that. So like the ability just to even supply extra data to start to fill in those RFPs, that's actually based in data because they're, they can be really niche. I want to quantify that headache, right? Because we're saving there, even if you don't get to see a huge number as an impact over years, because there's anybody that sort of had that RFP knows exactly what I'm talking about, and anything helps in terms of winning those opportunities.
Yeah, so I can't get you exactly the financial value of missing
Of a headache,
but I can get you what we're calling here increased productivity, aka saved time, right? Aka we didn't have to spend 4 hours trying to dig through anything we could find that got close to a redheaded, left-handed, I think freckled glasses wearing, what you said, that person, right? Here, they're able to answer those questions faster. They're able to have more immediate access to that data that they need to respond to these RFPs, and to reach, the insights they need to answer questions even on an ongoing basis faster. They also noted to your point, we're starting to be able to answer questions that they couldn't answer at all before. And so that goes back to the value delivery. But this story is just really about that time saved from the faster access to data, less digging, improved collaboration. They also talked about how they could distribute this information more efficiently across the organization. They cut down on individual clarification, question time, things like that. So across the analytics, sales, and marketing teams, the organization was saving over 800 hours a year, right? And I'll note that we do apply a time savings recapture rate, is what we call it, on the TEI team, to account for the fact that not every hour or minute that it's saved by employees is going to be directly reinvested into value add work. So we take that into account here when we're thinking about how we're getting to that value of $57,000 over 3 years. That's with, an attribution percentage here to make sure that we're not overestimating that. And then the last piece here, I don't know if I mentioned, was just another way that Bombora is helping these teams save time. So in having those conversations about recommendations to give to their content partners about what to publish, or thinking about what to propose to clients, they talked about how the Bombora team was really, really helpful when they were having these internal conversations before going to those clients and going to those partners, and it was saving them time and also giving them ideas that they wouldn't have otherwise. So this was talked about both externally, so how they could give better recommendations or more creative recommendations or more data-informed recommendations to their partners, but also this organization was using Bombora's insights to inform their own content strategy, right? So they were optimizing their own published information around the interests of their target audience. This was definitely something that they were relying on internally as well as externally. Some other benefits here that were more qualitative, we weren't able to quantify them in terms of dollars, but they're no less important, include improved employee and customer satisfaction, automating reports that were previously built out manually, and raising prices on products, not just the one we talked about before, which was those ABM advertising CPMs, but the organization raised prices on other similar products as well. And the last one here is strategic and innovation partnership. So again, that's talking about those discussions they're having with the Bombora team, where they're analyzing data and looking at data in a new way that they might not have come up with on their own. They said, I think, that Bombora provided an extra mile of assistance and value and consultation. They really enjoyed working with Bombora's team, and they felt that they did provide a lot of value and strategic value specifically, that they didn't have before they really deepened this relationship. So not just financially, but there's definitely a lot of benefit here that's happening in the day-to-day, in the behind the scenes, that's most likely helping with revenue down the line, but we weren't able to quantify for this study.
If I can, I just want to emphasize two things. So one, using it for their own internal editorial, right? That's a business problem everybody has, right? So whether or not you're a publisher that, isn't really selling a lot of advertising, but instead, I'm the publishing group for an association, and I need to drive events, and I need to drive attendance, all of that, right? It's the exact same principles, right? See what the audience is interested in based on this data, based on what they're researching across the rest of this universe, and then leverage it into your own process. So just want to acknowledge that that's an additional use case. It's the exact same one, but we've been talking so much about selling, advertising and content, that I wanted to call that out. And the second piece is that, the traditional way that that the business people at a publisher, right, sort of comes up with the ideas for editorial, right, to drive attendees to an event or to pitch ideas to an advertiser, is you harass an editor. Literally, that's the job. You just go find an editor and you say, hey, give me an idea in privacy. That costs time and money away from them doing like content, right? Them actually doing journalism. And so that's part of this whole transformation, right? Is that we're enabling the commercial teams to actually to figure this out, right? And therefore you're just not, you're not as reliant upon this. And then that editorial team can also see the value in sort of what this data can tell you. So that's, I just wanted to sort of emphasize the big points is like, imagine how much do you rely on like asking a human to like come up with ideas from sort of where they sit, as opposed to like starting with this data set across 20 billion page views. And then you get to edit, refine that, as opposed to like come up with idea, right? Look at the data first, then refine the idea.
Yeah, for sure. I think I'd love to keep just talking about the benefits. Unfortunately, to get to an ROI, we have to include the costs, right? So to just quickly look at the costs that we quantified here. So the first one is Bombora data and services costs. So they're paying for Bombora's data through a subscription model that flexes based on things like data quantity and use case. And then they pay separately for Bombora's services. And that includes things like that data strategy and analysis, all those conversations we were just talking about, guidance and insights for sales, events, content teams, customer success, you name it. And I will note that services investment is optional. Not all publishers would take advantage of the services piece, but it's definitely a big value add contributor to the results of this study. And this organization definitely said that it was worth the investment. So for them, that was about $120,000 annually for the data, and then $120,000 for services. Second cost is implementation, management, and training labor. So that's time spent on internal planning, process setup, technical implementation, and then training and ongoing management, which is honestly mostly contract renewal discussions, really light lift from an ongoing perspective in terms of labor, just to maintain the relationship and the data access. The bigger labor investment for this organization was the data analysis and reporting piece. So this organization specifically decided that they wanted to get as much value out of Bombora's data as they could. They knew more people were trying to use the data in internal conversations, in external conversations, incorporating the data in all these different places, and they didn't have the resources internally to scale their usage in a way where they could ensure quality and make sure that they were utilizing it as best they could. So the two teams that we talked to actually got permission basically to grow their own team counts so that they could get more value out of Bombora's data. So they hired 2 new individuals at the organization, whose main jobs were to work with Bombora's data and insights. And so that's where the largest that's the bulk of this $336,000 cost that we have for data analysis and reporting. That's not something that's being paid to Bombora. That is a choice that this organization made because they thought the investment would be worth it, given the value they could get out of what they were getting from Bombora. So these total costs are just about $1 million over the entire 3 years. And that's where we're getting, again, that NPV of 3.4 million, which is that $1 million of costs subtracted by that $4.5-ish million of benefits, which is landing us at a 335% ROI for this publisher. And then I'll leave you with this last quote. We've challenged Bombora to go deeper in some cases, to analyze things differently based on how clients like to see them. And they've always been receptive, always delivered on that. I don't think we've ever asked them something where they said they couldn't provide it. So that was another theme here that I talked about a little in the qualitative benefit section, but it was something that they found really unique to working with Bombora was, the strength of that partnership, the strength of the support, both strategic and otherwise, that they were getting on a day-to-day basis by working with this team. So I urge you to go out, read the full study, build your own business case here. We have a link up here for you to find and download the study on your own, and always happy to answer more questions about it. But that's what we have for the summary today. So I will turn it over to Q&A.
I want to call out one thing. So, right, like in regard to the cost, right? It's a scalable solution, right? So, and I think that's one of the questions that's coming up here is like, the publisher was using the data before, right, through another system. So there's a lot of ways sort of access our data and get started, right? We definitely believe in a crawl, walk, run, right? We're talking about a transformation of the business to start actually leveraging data to be consultative with customers. And we know that's a long journey. So we anticipate that to be a journey. And therefore, right, in terms of the fees associated and the investment that you want to make, it's certainly an evolution. It's certainly something that's scalable based on sort of where you are in your own transformation, your own evolution. So I just wanted to call that out. And I will stop talking, Nina. Thank you so much, Emma.
Thank you, Shalay.
That was awesome, of course. Final reminder for everybody, if you haven't had a chance yet, first reminder, if you haven't had a chance to download the full report, we're going to be dropping that link directly in the chat. We'll also be sending it to you with the follow-up email with the on-demand recording. Now is your last chance to submit questions in the chat or the Q&A box. But even if we don't get a chance to answer it live, still go ahead and put it in there, and we will do best to get back to you via email if we don't get a chance to talk about it. So we will dive right into the questions. And the first one, I'm going to kind of smoosh together a couple of people who asked sort of the same thing. And it's interesting because I know that working as part of the data co-op here, I know that we have a big range of publishers who are part of the data co-op, but it's especially looking at these huge numbers in the study right here, it's a question that comes up frequently is, like those costs look like more cost than we've ever spent on anything in our life. And those revenue numbers are bigger than anything we've gotten in our life. And, I'm smushing this in together with the question that Tom just sort of asked. It was on the same subject. Do we really need to invest those two people and $1 billion in order to onboard Bombora and get that much value from it? Or can smaller organizations also see value?
So absolutely, right. And most of our publishers are small, right? There's only a handful of large global publishers in this ecosystem. So of the 5,000 sites, most of them are not that. And we certainly want to be with the publisher as they sort of go forth in their journey. And the real question is like how much are you already leveraging data and how important is it to your business? And so honestly, those answers we know, right, are yes, and then always we want more. And so you sort of have to just go as you can. So with a lot of publishers, we sort of start with like, okay, low-hanging fruit, right? Hey, here's RFPs that we can't answer today. Let's start answering those, right? And like the team that's answering those RFPs have to be trained on one thing, right? Just start to supplement and find this very special functional area and map that back to my group. Hey, we cover privacy, so just look at those topics. And so you can really start small by just training on those specific use cases, just answering RFPs, just delivering data to a big time customer, right? We know that there's 20% of everybody's business comes, or 80% of everybody's business comes from the top 20% of their customers. So just focus on them. What parts, what data could we deliver to them that will help renew and expand your business with them, and just start there, right? And then you'll be able to see how much do we invest in one way or another, and you don't have to like boil the ocean, learn everything, like learn how to use data in every part of the business, but just focus on the ones that are going to drive the most revenue for you, and start there. And then you'll sort of hopefully go on the journey that this publisher did, in terms of like leveraging for their own editorial, right? Getting multiple teams sort of onboarded, and then seeing the need to actually hire those two folks. So I hope I answered that question.
Cool. I've got another one I think will probably be you to answer. And this is from Christina, who is our power question asker right now. They're just like coming in from this person. Can you give a brief overview on how we decide on what intent is?
Sure. So we generally start by looking at they start in two ways. One, we either can start by looking at the advertisers, or who we're trying to sell to, which could also be internally, right? If I'm trying to promote an event, I might be looking for intent for people to attend this event that I'm promoting, or this webinar that I'm promoting, or I am trying to convince this big brand to spend all of their money with us. So you either start with the sort of like end goal. And I'm saying this because it is flexible based on like what's the end goal here. So you can start with like the advertiser, or the advertiser type. Hey, we sell to this one brand, or we sell to a brand that services cloud security, and then you sort of identify the product categories within that, and then that's the intent signal that then you'll apply to see how much of your audience is in market for that. Look at those companies, who they are. And then figure out what you want to do with that. I want to use this to convince the advertiser to go buy, or I want to use this to validate the campaign they already ran. So that's one way. The other way is to look at your own editorial, right? We cover these 5 areas of supply chain. So I actually want to just, rather than just, hey, we're going to constantly push content into this supply chain channel, map the intent topics into that supply chain channel. And then you can actually leverage the data to start to think, hey, here's what's popular within my own website, right? Within this logistics area. And then here's what's popular across the rest of the cooperative, right? And so you could sort of look at it that way too. So, and that's how you start with intent, is I either start with my own editorial, or I start with my advertisers. And hopefully they cross over.
Cool. We've got one that has come in regarding there was a slide where Emma was talking about the improvement in partner retention. And this person is wondering if you can just talk a little bit more about the post-campaign reporting specifically. They say, we already do that for our advertisers. Why would the involvement of Bombora's data affect that?
Sure.
Yeah.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Emma.
You can definitely add more color to this because you have, more experience with the range here. I did want to note, it wasn't that they were not providing post-campaign reporting before. It was they were able to deliver much richer reporting than they were before, and they were able to prove and validate things like what organizations were having impressions, having views on content than they were previously, where they had just more limited data to deliver in those reports. So it was about, the value of those reports because of the wealth and depth of data that they now had access to.
Yeah. To take that one step further, right? So a traditional campaign report is, look, 10,000 people saw the ad and 1,000 people read the ad. Went to the page view or clicked or something else. Now let's go from people to businesses, and let's go to actually naming those businesses. And then let's also then add on, hey, this business, they all work in software, and then by the way, all of those businesses in software are now actively in market, right? Based on this intent, based on the increase in research on this topic. Hey, now they're in market for cloud security. Right. So you can actually see how that is the slide, like the evolution, right? You start with just saying 10,000 page views, and then you go to 10,000 page views at software companies, 10,000 pages at software companies like IBM, and then you go to the intent. So that's actually the reference point that we start with. We just go with what do you already have, right? And then how do we add color to that has meaningful value to the customer? And then once you're providing meaningful value, you know that you're winning in the like moving upstream, becoming a strategic partner. We're not just an endpoint for ad serving.
All right, looks like we have time for probably another one or two. I will go with our power asker here. And Shalay, I know this is one that you're going to like. Do you send the data in real time? Have fun.
You certainly can. So as a data company, right, our job is to push you data however you want it to go. So we do have a direct integration into Adobe Analytics, Google Analytics. So, if you do want to start to supply real-time reporting to customers, you absolutely can. We also push data to you in real time for obviously activation, right? If you want to actually run ads against this audience. However, I generally don't recommend that. How many of us can actually operate in real time with anything? We're in a Zoom right now, not interacting with the new data that's presented to us. So I generally don't, but it's possible. And usually, I think in terms of campaign timelines, right? So if something typically runs for 3 months, you want to have like an optimization report, right? Every couple of weeks, maybe something more in depth at the midway point, and then of course something big at the end. That's typically how people sort of package the data, is based on those timelines. And then if you are working with a big customer that does buy, maybe they're always running throughout the year, and then you're sort of thinking in terms of their own buying cycles, right? Typically in B2B buying, that journey could be anywhere from 3 months to 18 months. So it's usually not in a day or in a moment. And that's why the sort of longer time periods are generally better, but it's totally up to you, to your market, what your customer is looking for. But I just generally don't do real time for reporting.
Speaking of data generally, though, I have another person who is wondering how that data is presented to publishers. What does it look like? Do you send it to them in an email? Is it a dashboard? What does it look like?
Sure. So we have an analytics platform that you can log in, press buttons, and take a look at it. It's got pretty pie graphs. Sorry. So plenty of visuals to sort of make the data easy. So if you don't want to try to pretend that you can understand spreadsheet, you don't have to. So any end user can definitely access it. It's very self-serve and easy. And then, but we also do have those Excel files, right? If you have a data analytics team that wants to see it all, map it all, match it to their first party data, that's all possible too. And then you could just visualize it in your own analytics platform. Or of course, right, Adobe Analytics, Google Analytics, or any other sort of CDP, DMP, et cetera. And then it's really about how then do you package it for your customer, right? That customer either being internal customers or external customers. And usually, right, we'll have a full dashboard, but usually you'll just want to present 1 or 2 data points. You don't want to overwhelm people that are not really familiar yet. So you sort of pick your favorite pie chart and then you send that, like screenshot, or automated email, right? Of course, we have automation to push things into email. We have APIs, SFTP, everything that you sort of need to get access to data.
All right, here's a fun one, which may be for either of you or both of you. And Shalay, you already had one sort of partial answer to this before when you talked about, you wish there was a way to quantify the headache around answering specific RFPs. Is there any other benefit or anything else that either of you wish that you could have quantified that wasn't necessarily able to be represented in this study?
I think for me, it would have been the ways that Bombora was informing the content strategy of the organization itself. That was something that was unquantified or qualitative in the study, and I think it could have been a really strong quantitative benefit. I think that, if we put a lot more effort into it, somebody probably could map out a direct line there, and from the improved strategy and the utilization of intent data specifically for informing, what the publisher was publishing itself and driving its own media plan. I think that would have been what I would want to quantify.
I think for me, since I've been a publisher, so I've hired ad ops, I've hired account managers and sellers, and transforming from selling a banner ad to being consultative, right? That's a transformation. That's an investment of time and resources and all of that. Bombora helps speed that, right? Because you don't have to become a data scientist to know or to be able to find an easy finding that the customer excited that tells you, I need to keep spending time here, right? 50% of the ads are served to C-suite. You don't have to be a data scientist to know that that's going to excite a customer. And if I can just start to get them excited about that, then I can get them to buy into, right? Let me tell you about intent and the impact of this advertising on your total pipeline, right? That's pretty advanced. That's consultative selling. But so for me, I wish that there was a better way. This is nothing to do with Forrester. Incredible job, right? This is just about like, I wish there was a better way to quantify that transformation that many companies of all kinds are undergoing, and how do you speed and accelerate that, and then show the ROI on it. I think that's something I think about all the time. It's just how hard that is to do, and I think that we can help do that.
All right, looks like we got time to squeeze in one more, but we're going to end in about 2 minutes. Last one, there was a mention of, on one of the previous slides, I think it was probably the slide that was talking about improvements in efficiency. So even if you don't have the budget to hire those extra 2 people, hopefully, we would be able to help teams improve the efficiency of people who are already working for a publisher. There's something specifically about automating reports that were previously built out manually. What are a couple examples of some of those that would be able to automate those kind of reports?
So I'd have to go back and look at my notes to figure out what the exact reports were, but they talked about how, they had some kind of templated reporting that they provided. Shalay talked about post-campaign, it follows the same structure. They're providing all their clients, all their partners with a lot of the same structure of reports, and they never felt like they had the bandwidth and the data richness to make that something worth automating. And once those got more built out, they were more informative. They became something that the organization wanted to help automate because they took more time, because they were, more information rich. And then they also felt that they were able to justify the automation of them because they knew of the extra value that those reports were providing to clients, and they were saving some of the time that's demonstrated on this slide here that allowed them to, with those new resources, spend the time up front to put that automation in place because they knew that it would be worth it for them down the line.
Cool. Good answer. Good timing. It is 2:50 p.m., so it is time for us to end. That is all the time we have for questions. Again, if we didn't get a chance to answer your question live, we will be in touch via email when we send the on-demand recording. Thanks again so much to Emma and Shalay, and to everybody who attended here live. I think that's all we got. Have a great day.
Thanks.
Thank you.